All right, welcome. Today we're going to take a deep academic dive into the constellation Aries. Now, it might not have the show-stopping brilliance of Orion or the everyday familiarity of the Big Dipper, but Aries represents a kind of time capsule of astronomical history. For thousands of years, it was the fundamental starting point for mapping the entire sky.
And that phrase, first among equals, really captures its historical status perfectly. See, it wasn't the biggest constellation, it wasn't the brightest, but it held the most important job in the sky. It was the starting line, the prime meridian of the celestial sphere. It was the point where the sun began its yearly journey, kicking off the vernal equinox and the entire astronomical year.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll explore that historical role as the celestial starting point. Then we'll get into its astrometric profile, its stats, if you will. After that, we'll zoom in on its key stars, dive into the incredible myth of the Golden Fleece, and we'll wrap up with what it means for observers like you and me today.
Okay, let's jump right into this foundational role. To really get a handle on Aries, you have to understand that it was once the anchor for the entire zodiacal system in classical astronomy. Now, this is the crucial concept, the point of vernal equinox, which is still marked by the symbol of the ram's horns. For more than 2,000 years, this exact spot in space, where the sun's highway, the ecliptic, crosses over the celestial equator, was located right inside the boundaries of Aries. This made the constellation the 0 point, the absolute starting line for measuring celestial longitude.
So, why did it move? Well, the answer is a fascinating phenomenon called axial precession. The best way to picture it is to think of the Earth not as a perfectly stable spinning ball, but more like a gyroscope that's slowly wobbling. Over a huge cycle of almost 26,000 years, this wobble changes the orientation of Earth in space, and as a result, that equinox point drifts westward. It's a grand, slow cosmic precession that has carried the vernal equinox out of Aries and into its next-door neighbor, Pisces.
Okay, so we've covered the history. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty and look at the physical characteristics of the constellation itself. We're shifting from its historical importance to the hard data that defines Aries' place on our map of the sky.
Aries takes up a patch of sky that measures 441.4 square degrees. Out of the 88 modern constellations, that puts it at number 39 in terms of size. So, it's not a giant, but it's not tiny either. A respectable, mid-tier player when it comes to celestial real estate.
And this chart really helps put that number into perspective. You look at Hydra, the water serpent. It's just a sprawling monster, the biggest constellation we have, at over 1,300 square degrees. Aries looks pretty modest next to that. But then, you look at the other end of the scale. Crux, the famous Southern Cross, is tiny. It's just a little guy covering a mere 68 square degrees. Aries fits very comfortably right in the middle.
Now, the great news is that because of its position near the celestial equator, Aries is remarkably easy to see for most of us. It's fully visible from the North Pole all the way down to 60 degrees south latitude, which means the vast majority of people on Earth can get a good look at it. The absolute best time to go looking for it is during the late autumn months in the Northern Hemisphere, when it's riding high in the sky around midnight.
Let's shift our focus now from position to physics. The main stars of Aries are actually a fascinating little laboratory for studying how stars evolve and interact. In fact, they played a huge role in the early days of telescopic astronomy.
This table does a brilliant job of showing just how diverse stars can be. Let's compare Hamal, the brightest star in Aries, with our own sun. Hamal is an orange giant, a star in a much later stage of its life. It's already burned through the hydrogen fuel in its core, so it has swelled up to be 15 times bigger than our sun. It glows with that deep orange light of a cooler star, but don't let that fool you. It's pumping out 90 times our sun's luminosity. And get this, just like our sun, it has a planet, a huge gas giant almost twice the mass of Jupiter.
The next two stars, Sheraton and Mesartheme, are perfect examples of two very different kinds of double star systems. Sheraton is what we call a spectroscopic binary. Its two stars are orbiting so incredibly close to each other that we can't see them as separate points of light. We only know it's a pair because we can analyze the light and see a periodic Doppler shift, a wobble, as they orbit. But Mesartheme, that's a different story. It's a visual binary. Its stars are far enough apart that you can resolve them into two beautiful, distinct points of light with even a modest telescope.
And the discovery of Mesartheme's dual nature was just a landmark moment in science. Picture this. It's 1664, and Robert Hooke is out tracking a comet. He decides to turn his newfangled telescope towards this seemingly ordinary star, and suddenly he sees not one point of light, but two. This was one of the very first times that humanity confirmed what appears to be a single star could actually be a complex system. It blew the doors wide open for a whole new way of looking at the stars.
But Aries holds secrets that are far more profound than its bright stars. Tucked away within its borders is a little star called Tea Garden Star. It's an ultra-cool red dwarf, and it's incredibly close to us, just 12.5 light-years away. Now here's why this is so important. In 2019, astronomers confirmed that it has two Earth-mass planets orbiting it, and the crucial detail: both of these worlds are orbiting squarely within the star's habitable zone, that delicate Goldilocks region where the dim, reddish light might be just right for liquid water to exist on their surfaces.
So, we've explored the science. Now let's turn to the culture. The myth tied to Aries is one of the great epics of Greek mythology. It's the story of the Golden Fleece, a sweeping tale of betrayal, rescue, and ultimate sacrifice.
The whole story starts with a conspiracy. A jealous Queen Ino creates a fake famine and then bribes an oracle to say that the only way to stop it is to sacrifice her stepchildren, Phrixus and Hele. Just as they're about to be killed, their real mother, the cloud goddess Nephele, sends a magnificent ram with a fleece of pure gold to rescue them. As they fly east, a tragedy occurs. Hele loses her grip and falls into the strait that is now named the Hellespont, the Sea of Hele in her memory. The ram carries the grieving Phrixus the rest of the way to the safety of Colchis.
When he arrives, Phrixus sacrifices the ram to Zeus out of gratitude. Its incredible golden fleece is then hung in a sacred grove, where it's guarded by a dragon that never sleeps. The ram itself is placed among the stars by the gods, becoming the constellation Aries we know today. And that fleece? Well, it becomes the legendary prize sought by Jason and the Argonauts in their famous quest.
All right, let's bring all of this home for the modern observer. We're going to shift back to the present day and give you some practical tips for actually finding Aries, and they'll sum up why it's still so significant today.
Finding Aries is actually pretty straightforward if you use its more famous neighbors as signposts. First, find that unmistakable tiny dipper-shaped cluster of stars, the Pleiades. Once you've got them, just shift your gaze to the west or to the right, and you'll find the gentle arc of Aries' main stars. Another way is to find the small, sharp triangle shape of the constellation Triangulum. Aries will be sitting directly south of it.
Now, for anyone who has even a small telescope, I have to give you a specific recommendation. You have to target Gamma Ariadis, or Mesarthim. As we discussed, it's not only historically significant, it's one of the most beautiful and easily split double stars in the entire sky. To see its two crisp, white points of light is to share the very same view that amazed Robert Hooke more than 350 years ago. It's a real connection to the history of science.
So, we can conclude with this thought. Aries is a constellation that truly bridges the ancient and the modern. It's been a navigational benchmark, a mythological icon, a laboratory for stellar physics, and now it's a prime hunting ground in our search for extraterrestrial life. And that leaves us with one final, provocative question. From the celestial navigation of antiquity to the search for habitable worlds around Tea Garden Star, what next chapter in the history of astronomy will be written within the stars of Aries?